Hey everyone, it's Mike Scala. Wanted to take some time to answer the two questions that were asked of me and the candidates running in District 32. First question is, what can voters hold you accountable for in improving the well-being of District 32 residents within the first 6 months of your election? Now that's a very good question. Obviously 6 months isn't a whole lot of time, but we should keep in mind this is going to be a short city council term because of the redistricting. It's only 2 years, and so 6 months really is a quarter of the term, and so we do need to show that we can get things done in that time. And I think this is part of why I'm the best candidate in this particular race, because I've got the qualifications to get things done on day one. So what does that mean? That takes a few different iterations. Of course, we're pushing for a very bold legislative agenda when it comes to building, investing in our infrastructure coming out of this pandemic, and that's going to create good, high-paying union jobs in the short run. We should tie local hiring goals to them. But in the long run, it's all about creating that economic opportunity that we need to get back on our feet as a city and as a district. So we're talking about the Queens Rail. We're talking about municipal broadband and bold projects like that. Obviously, we can't promise they'll be completed in 6 months, but you may know that I've got a very hands-on approach when it comes to legislation. I've served as counsel and legislative director in the state Senate working on bills. That approach is not going to change. So I will say in that first 6 months, we will have very robust and very good legislation introduced in the city council that we'll be moving on. And I won't want to be known as a legislative council person, not just someone who's in a community, because that's very important as well, but someone who knows how to do that work at City Hall at the legislative level. Of course, you want to take things more local and talk about just better representation in the district, which includes staffing our offices, including one here in Rockaway, but making sure that we can cover our district in terms of our constituent liaisons. And this is a very eclectic district. We say Queens is the world's borough. I think there's no better example of that on display than in our district. When you look at the multitude of cultures and backgrounds we have represented here, we want to make sure that we can reach out and sufficiently touch everyone in our district, and that means having people who can speak the different languages and who understand the people. That's very important, and I think that's something we can improve upon coming out of the current council term. I think also, building on that, participatory budgeting. That's something that the current council member has brought to Rockaway into the city. I think we can do a lot more with that, and in those first 6 months, you're going to see us moving in that direction. We're going to bring it back, but we're also going to make sure that it's done in a representative way where every part of our district knows what's at stake and has an equal opportunity to be involved in it. I also want to make sure that the projects that are going to be on the ballot for that, and just for those who don't know, this allows people, the community, to vote on how discretionary funds are spent. So if there's a particular project that the Rockaway Women for Progress champions, for example, they can essentially campaign for it and make sure that it has a chance to be voted on and money can be allocated to it. But I want to make sure it's done in a fair way. I want to make sure that the projects that we're putting on the ballot are fully vetted prior to us voting on them so that we know that they can be implemented. The current issue that we've found with this is that sometimes projects win, and we're all excited that we're going to get them as a community, and then we later find out that they cannot be implemented for various legal or other reasons. So I want to make sure that we know what we're getting ourselves into, and that once we take those votes, we know that the winners can actually be implemented. And I want to bring that to the community and for all of our residents. All right, let's move on to the second question. It says, Rockaway has only one hospital and no trauma center. How will you improve healthcare? Also, a very good question. As many of you may recall, in 2012, I was there when they were closing Peninsula Hospital. We were rallying. We were all saying at the time that one hospital was not enough to serve the entire peninsula. And how true was that then? It remains true. And St. John's isn't enough. As the question mentioned, St. John's does not have a trauma center. So God forbid someone falls, hits their head on the beach, or finds themselves in any kind of situation like that, they have to take an ambulance or get to Jamaica Hospital or a different hospital. And given our terrible transportation situation and everything that we deal with here in the Rockaways, oftentimes people tragically pass away in the ambulance. They can't get to the hospital in time. So, of course, the goal is to have another hospital. While we're at it, let's make sure that we can keep St. John's. It has no trauma center, but there was recently a proposal for a 15-bed micro-hospital. You saw me on the news the next day saying that's a ridiculous plan. We have to fight against that. So we need to not take the health care that we do have here for granted, but we need to expand upon that. Long run, we want that second hospital, but we also can fill in the gaps. We want to have a trauma center on the peninsula. We can do it in our district in Rockaway. We also can have more options. You know, the Adabo Center is great. We can have more clinics, more smaller facilities where people can get that health care that they need. And let's also improve transportation to the healthcare facilities we have. I actually spoke with Jean Belford, president of the Rockaway Women for Progress, and she had the idea of a heliport at Reese Park that can take people via helicopter to our hospital. So these are all things that we need to be looking at. And so it's an all-of-the-above approach, both in terms of the short-term and long-term, expanding access to healthcare.